fiscal obligations, we have our direct expenses. Those are our things like our operating and maintenance expenses, any existing debt service for the utility, as well as any rate or future capital funding that might come through new debt service as well. So those are the direct costs that we consider. We also have indirect costs, so making sure that we are meeting our reserve balances throughout the study period and any debt service coverage ratios if those are in play. So finally, we will compare that forecast of our obligations to our rates under their existing rate levels to determine whether there's any forecasted deficiencies in the future. If we identify some deficiencies over that time period, we'll propose some rate action to correct those, ideally trying to minimize the impacts on customers. So jumping into some of the key assumptions, we've got to make some assumptions about our study to build that forward-looking forecast. We're going to be talking about a study time frame from now, fiscal year 2025, through fiscal year 2032, so about 8 years. We do build our model to look out 20 years, but are concentrating on a shorter time period as we work to set rates. We typically will use the budget for 2025 as a baseline for forecasting our expenses, and then add inflationary factors to those to build out that forecast into the future. I mentioned a reserve target on the previous slide. We will be aiming to hit 90 days of O&M expenses as our reserve target. That's between 1.4 and 1.8 million. That's really in place to weather those cash flow fluctuations throughout the year. When we're forecasting our revenues, we're looking at a customer growth rate of about 1.15% annually. That represents about 300 new units per year. Right now, our annual fee revenue brings in about $7.9 million a year. Moving forward, that'll grow to about $8.6 million, just with that growth rate that you see there. I mentioned expense inflation, so we start with the city's 2025 water budget, and we increase that by an estimate of inflation. It really depends on the line item we're looking at. We may have some general cost inflation for certain, professional services line items, and labor and benefits may increase at a different rate. But overall, we're looking at our expenses increasing by about 3.5% annually throughout the forecast period. The next piece here is our capital plan. So from 2025 to 2032, we've got about $84.3 million in identified capital projects that came from the recent comprehensive planning effort. In order to fund that, partially we'll be looking at a new debt service of about $736,000 annually. That'll provide about $5 million in proceeds and a 10-year payback term. And then finally here, we'll also be looking at updating the city's capitalization fees. Those are the costs that new users buy into the system. We'll talk a bit more about that as well. But the couple scenarios you see today are going to include a 3-year phase-in plan to move those capitalization fees to their calculated maximum. So next here, we're going to talk through the revenue requirement specifics. A bit of repetition here, but again, we have revenues at about that $7.9 to $8.4 million, and that's in support of O&M expenses at about $5.8 million currently, growing to about 7.5 with inflation by 2032. The city currently does not have any debt service for the water utility, but as I mentioned, we're looking to add some debt service, about $736,000 annually. Again, that'll provide about $5 million in proceeds. And as I mentioned as well, $84.3 million across this next 8-year time frame. And you can see off to the right kind of the cadence of those capital projects expenditures. Excuse me. Ultimately, we're proposing to fund the $84.3 million through a mix of rate revenues, capitalization fee revenues, as well as that new $5 million lease proceed. So as I mentioned, giving a couple scenarios for consideration. The first is funding the full capital plan, that's $84.3 million. We'd be looking at 22% rate increases from 2025 to 2027, dropping down to 2% annually through 2031 in order to fund that full capital plan. For a single family residence, that's about $5.23 in terms of a monthly impact in 2025. That monthly impact would grow to about $7.80 by 2027 before dropping to under $1. Yes.
I have a quick question for you. You have, it climbs and then it drops off. What's the
So
theory behind that?
because we're cash funding in each of these scenarios a fairly significant portion, that the capital plan is somewhat front-loaded. And so we need to get that money in the door quickly in order to fund that plan as it's laid out.
Okay, thank you.
Cumulatively, I can tell you in 2032, scenario 1 would be about 96%, and scenario 2 would be about 93%. So they're fairly similar by the time we get to the end of that 8-year time period.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
While you're there, and maybe you'll go over this, is the 12,000 gallons a month where are you getting that number from?
So those come from specific stats at the city. We look at all of your detailed customer statistics to come up with this annual amount. So this is an annual average, and what we see actually for the city of Coeur d'Alene is quite a lot of peaking. So in the winter, we see maybe 5,000 to 6,000 as an average. That can be quadruple in the summer, depending on the outdoor usage of a single-family residence. So that's what drives a lot of our infrastructure sizing, is that sizing for the peak. So there is a lot of discretionary usage that happens here in the summer. So just to give you an idea, with scenario 2, whenever we talk about cutting capital costs, we have to understand there can be risks associated with that. We know the comp plan is developed for a reason to satisfy all the needs of the utility. So just wanted to lay out some of the risks that could be on the table if those capital costs are cut. They really kind of run the gamut of risks. There could slow growth, which I know may or may not be concerning to some folks. But most of this also refers to some deferred maintenance. Perhaps we would be okay, but perhaps not, depending on the status of those infrastructure needs. So I'll pass this back to Kyle for a minute to talk about the capital plan.
So currently what you see up here, and we provided you with a comp plan. Mr. Gookin reached out to me because these are hard to see, and I do apologize because they're pulled directly from the comp plan, and they're very small in there too, so just so you're aware of that. But the list in here is from our comp plan projects that are listed out for the 5-year plan that you currently see before you. Each year you have a layout in existing users and then growth, and dollar values are separated between those two on projected plans going through here. And I apologize, I can't even see it up there as I can see it here. So as we move forward, each one of these projects refers back to the map. So if you see like S1,
Oh, in there, yeah.
you can go to our plan map that kind of lays out on the picture of where that project is located. So you can determine whether that's needed there or not as the city grows and maintenance is needed. Go back to the 5-year plan. When you go through there, everything is broken down into supply needs, booster station replacements and years that need to be removed or need to be updated, storage tanks that need to be repaired or maintained on a routine schedule, distribution system area where transmission mains may need to be installed, and then down at the bottom you have capital improvement projects that were needed in those specific years on a 5-year plan. The map's a little bit wonky. We asked them to turn it because north is to the left of that, but it does not fit on the page in the comp plan nor in the brochure that you guys have. The next slide is a 20-year, so that's looking further out, estimating when wells will be needed, when tanks will be needed for growth within the system, and that's an estimated timeline on those depending on the percentage of growth from year to year.
Kyle, I have a quick question
Yes, sir.
for you if I could. So we do a 5-year capital. Can you look back? You've been there 10, 15 years. Have we always been able to complete the 5-year capital plan?
We've always stayed pretty close on track with our comp plan to make sure we keep up with the city's needs. So anytime there's a change in the city's annexation or an area that grows, we always accommodate that and assume funds to help fund those areas to bring those up to code as we replace those water mains.
And have we done 20-year capitals?
Cap plans, yes. Each time we do a capitalization plan or a rate study, we always look out 20 years. That's our long-range scope. We always really focus on those 5 years to try to stay in line with that, and we follow that very closely.
All right, thank you. Questions, Council?